Imagine walking into a hotel, excited for a new chapter, only to be met with judgment before you even speak. That's exactly what happened to Mia, a bright young woman who simply wanted to check into a room. But the receptionist, Rachel, had other plans. Her dismissive tone and icy glare made it clear Mia wasn't welcome. Little did Rachel know, Mia wasn't just any guest. Her father, a man of quiet power and strong principles, had just acquired the very hotel Rachel worked in. As Mia tried to explain, Rachel's attitude only worsened, leaving viewers wondering how long this behavior had gone unnoticed. Will Rachel's assumptions cost her everything? Or will she learn a life-changing lesson about respect and kindness? Stay tuned as this story unfolds in a way no one could have predicted. Mia stood at the front desk, clutching her reservation details, trying to keep calm as Rachel's sharp words cut through the air. "We're fully booked," Rachel said curtly, her eyes barely meeting Mia's. But Mia knew that wasn't true. She'd confirmed her stay just hours earlier. It wasn't about the room. It was something else, something unspoken but painfully obvious. As Mia tried to reason with Rachel, guests came and went, each greeted with polite smiles and warm welcomes. But for her, it was different. Rachel's cold demeanor seemed personal, though they'd never met. Behind Mia's calm exterior, frustration simmered. She'd grown up watching her father treat everyone with dignity, no matter their background, and this moment felt like a slap in the face. Unbeknownst to Rachel, her actions weren't just being observed by Mia. Someone else was watching, someone who had the power to change everything. Mia took a deep breath, deciding to stay calm despite Rachel's attitude. "I have my confirmation right here," she said, holding up her phone. Rachel barely glanced at it before shaking her head. "I told you, we're full. You'll have to find somewhere else." Her voice was flat, her words dismissive, as though Mia wasn't worth her time. Across the lobby, an older gentleman in a sharp suit watched the exchange closely. It was Mia's father, Mr. Johnson, who had arrived early to inspect his new hotel. He hadn't yet revealed his identity to the staff, wanting to observe how they handled everyday situations. What he saw left him both angry and deeply disappointed. Meanwhile, Mia felt the stares of other guests in the lobby. Embarrassment mingled with anger as she tried to stand her ground. What was really behind Rachel's behavior? And how long had this been happening? Mia felt her patience wearing thin. "Can I speak to a manager, please?" she asked, her voice steady but firm. Rachel crossed her arms, her expression defiant. "The manager's busy," she replied, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Nearby, Mr. Johnson clenched his jaw, resisting the urge to intervene just yet. He wanted to see how far this would go. As Mia stood there, the whispers of onlookers filled the lobby. A few staff members behind the desk exchanged nervous glances, but no one stepped in. It was clear this wasn't the first time Rachel had acted this way, and the realization made Mia's heart ache. Rachel's phone buzzed on the counter, and she glanced at the screen before smirking. "I guess some people just don't belong in places like this," she muttered under her breath, loud enough for Mia to hear. Mia froze, her confidence momentarily shaken. But before she could respond, Mr. Johnson finally stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. Every eye in the lobby turned toward him as he cleared his throat, the tension in the room reaching its peak. All eyes were on Mr. Johnson as he walked up to the front desk. His calm yet authoritative demeanor caused Rachel to stiffen slightly, though she quickly masked it with her usual indifference. "Excuse me," he began, his deep voice steady. "Is there a problem here?" Rachel hesitated before answering. "No problem, sir," she said, her tone suddenly polite. "This guest just doesn't have a reservation." She gave Mia a pointed look, clearly trying to downplay the situation. But Mr. Johnson wasn't buying it. "I see," he said, glancing at Mia, who stood tall despite the tension. "Would you mind pulling up the reservation system? I'd like to take a look myself." Rachel blinked, caught off guard. "Sir, I don't think that's necessary." "It's very necessary," Mr. Johnson interrupted, his voice firm. As Rachel reluctantly turned to the computer, the door to the back office opened. A senior staff member stepped out, her face pale as she recognized Mr. Johnson. "Mr. Johnson," she stammered, her voice trembling. I didn't realize you were here." Rachel froze, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She slowly looked at him, confusion and fear creeping into her expression. Mia watched as realization dawned on Rachel's face. This wasn't just a random guest stepping in. This was the new hotel owner. The air in the lobby grew thick with tension as everyone waited to see what would happen next. Mr. Johnson turned to the senior staff member, his expression calm but commanding. "Good timing," he said. "Perhaps you can help clarify this situation." The manager hesitated, her gaze flicking nervously between Rachel and Mr. Johnson. "Of course, sir," she said, stepping forward quickly. "Let me check the reservation system for you." Rachel's face flushed as she stepped aside, suddenly looking very small behind the counter. The manager typed swiftly, and within moments, Mia's reservation appeared on the screen. "Here it is," the manager announced, her voice tinged with relief. "Mia Johnson, booked under the VIP suite." Rachel's mouth opened, but no words came out. The color drained from her face as she realized her mistake, or rather, her deliberate actions had been exposed. Mr. Johnson folded his arms, his eyes fixed on Rachel. "Care to explain why my daughter's reservation was ignored?" he asked, his tone even but laced with disappointment. The lobby fell silent. Everyone seemed to be holding their breath, waiting for Rachel's response. As the weight of the situation settled in, Rachel stammered, I didn't realize." "You didn't realize who she was," Mr. Johnson interrupted, his voice sharp. "But you certainly realized enough to treat her differently. And that's a problem." The tension reached its breaking point, and everyone in the room knew there was no going back from this moment. Rachel stood frozen, unable to find an excuse. The truth was plain for everyone to see, and there was no escaping it now. Mr. Johnson sighed, the weight of disappointment clear in his eyes. "This hotel stands for respect and hospitality, not judgment and exclusion," he said firmly. "If you can't uphold those values, you don't belong here." The manager stepped in, quietly escorting Rachel away from the desk. Mia watched, her emotions a mix of relief and sadness. She didn't enjoy seeing someone lose their job, but she knew her father's decision was right. As the lobby slowly returned to normal, Mr. Johnson turned to Mia with a warm smile. "Welcome, sweetheart," he said, his voice gentle now. "Let's make sure your stay is everything it should be." Mia smiled back, feeling proud of her father's integrity and grateful for the lesson in standing up for what's right.